Commander Vrel had seen executions before, plenty of them, but never one quite like this. He stood on the observation platform overlooking the execution yard, his forearms clasped behind his back in what he hoped looked like military composure. Below him, the firing squad, 6 of his best soldiers stood at attention. Their plasma rifles gleamed under the harsh twin suns of Thresh 9, charged and ready. The heat shimmers rising from the compound's metallic floor made everything look slightly unreal, like a fever dream. But this was real, too real. The prisoner shuffled forward, and Vrel felt his secondary heart skip a beat. She was small, laughably small. Maybe half his height, with pale skin that looked like it would tear if you breathed on it too hard. Her hair, dark and matted with dried blood, hung over her face in tangled strands. The restraints, heavy durasteel cuffs designed for Korvathi criminals, looked absurdly oversized on her thin wrists. She wore the tattered remains of what might have been a flight suit once, now scorched and shredded from the crash. A human. An actual, honest-to-the-void human. Vrel had thought they were myths. Oh sure, there were stories, whispered tales in the barracks after too much fermented kelp. Stories about the bipedal terrors from the third planet of a backwater system, the ones who came from a world so hostile that merely surviving there turned them into living weapons. Stories about their ridiculous pain tolerance, their stubborn refusal to die, their insane physical capabilities that defied every logical biological principle. But stories were just stories, right? Propaganda from the war 3 cycles ago. Exaggerations meant to scare new recruits. Vrel had laughed at those tales, dismissed them as the ramblings of soldiers who had seen too much combat. He was not laughing now. The guards, 2 massive Korvathi veterans who had served in the Outer Rim conflicts, looked nervous as they brought her to the execution post. Actually nervous. Vrel could see the purple flush of anxiety spreading across their neck ridges, could hear the slight tremor in their breathing. One of them, Sergeant Cross, had personally taken down a rebel stronghold single-handedly last rotation. That same Cross now held the human's arm like he was transporting a live thermal detonator. The woman, this Rita Torres, according to the tribunal records, was placed against the carbon-scored execution wall. The restraints clicked into the magnetic locks with a sound that echoed across the silent compound. She should have been terrified. She should have been begging, crying, pleading for mercy like every other condemned prisoner Vrel had ever seen. Instead, she lifted her head and smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a desperate smile, but a smile that said she found something genuinely amusing about all of this. Her eyes, an unsettling shade of brown that seemed to catch the light wrong, scanned the firing squad with what looked like professional assessment. Then those eyes moved to Vrel, and he felt his skin prickle under his uniform. You have been found guilty by the Korvathi Military Tribunal of espionage, unauthorized entry into restricted space, and violation of the Colonial Protection Act, Vrel announced, his voice amplified by the speakers built into the platform. He had given this speech 43 times before. It should have been routine. The sentence is death by firing squad, to be carried out immediately. Do you have any final word? Rita Torres tilted her head, considering the question with the same casual air someone might use when deciding what to have for lunch. Yeah, actually, she said, and her voice was raspy, probably from dehydration, but steady, so steady. I have a question for your firing squad down there. Can you guys aim faster? 'Cause I have places to be, and I was hoping we could speed this along. The silence that followed was absolute. Vrel's translator implant flickered, wondering if it had malfunctioned. Had she just asked them to execute her faster? One of the soldiers in the firing squad, a young recruit named Paxil, actually lowered his rifle slightly, confusion written across his features. That was sarcasm, by the way, Rita added helpfully, that smile growing wider. You know, humor, laugh track. No, tough crowd. Vrel felt something cold settle in his chest, right where his primary heart pumped. This was wrong. Everything about this felt wrong. Prisoners facing death did not make jokes. They did not smile. They did not look at trained killers with the sort of amused tolerance a parent might show to misbehaving children. Unless the stories were not stories at all. Unless the myths were memories. Vrel raised his hand ready to give the order to fire, and tried very hard to ignore the way his fingers trembled. 3 days earlier, Vrel had been enjoying his morning stimulant when the alert came through. An unidentified vessel had breached the Thresh 9 defense perimeter and crashed into the northern wasteland sector. Not crashed elegantly either. The ship had carved a burning scar across 15 kilometers of desert, taking out 2 sensor towers and a storage depot before finally coming to rest in a smoking crater. The recovery team had found her in the wreckage, unconscious but alive, impossibly alive. The crash site read temperatures hot enough to liquefy bone. The ship's hull had compressed like an accordion. Any reasonable species would have been paced, but they had pulled Rita Torres out with nothing more than a concussion and some impressive bruising. That should have been Vrel's first clue. The tribunal hearing had been a formality, really. Grand Magistrate Kellen, a pompous bureaucrat with more medals than combat experience, had presided over the proceedings with theatrical flourish. The evidence was damning. No flight plan, no identification codes, no proper authorization. The ship's computer had been wiped, conveniently, and contained encrypted files that their best analysts could not crack. Clearly a spy, Kellen had declared, his jowls wobbling with indignation. Sent by the Terran Alliance to gather intelligence on our military installations. Rita, sitting in the accused chair with her hands cuffed, had actually laughed at that. Not a polite chuckle but a full-throated laugh that echoed through the tribunal chamber. "Oh honey, no," she had said, shaking her head. "I am a freight hauler. I haul freight, boring freight, medical supplies mostly. I got caught in a stellar drift current that threw my navigation completely sideways, and when I tried to correct, my jump drive hiccuped. You know how temperamental those old Mark 7 drives are, right? No? Just me?" Kellen had turned a deeper shade of purple. "You expect us to believe you accidentally crashed into one of the most heavily defended systems in the sector?" "Accidentally," Rita had grinned, despite the split lip and the bruise covering half her face. "Buddy, I did not even know your sector existed until I woke up in your lovely accommodations here. No offense, but you are not exactly on the major trade routes. This is what? Backwater territory, frontier space? The kind of place people only visit if they are lost or desperate." Vel had watched this exchange from his position by the wall, required to attend as the base commander but not permitted to speak. He had found himself fascinated by her complete lack of self-preservation instinct. She was insulting a magistrate who held her life in his hands, and she seemed to be enjoying it. The encrypted files, Kellen had pressed, ignoring her comments. "Explain those. Personal logs, vacation photos, some really questionable romance novels I do not want anyone reading." Rita had shrugged, which had caused her restraints to rattle. "You want the encryption key? Sure. It is my cat's name backward with the number of times my ex-boyfriend disappointed me. Fair warning, that is a big number." The tribunal had not been amused. Kellen had conferred with his 2 advisors, both of whom looked like they would rather be anywhere else. The deliberation had lasted maybe 4 minutes. Then Kellen had stood, adjusted his ceremonial sash, and pronounced judgment. "Rita Torres of Earth, you are found guilty of all charges. The sentence is death." And Rita, ancestors help him, had actually yawned. "Yeah, saw that coming," she had said. "Quick question though. You guys have appeals in this system, or is it more of a, express lane situation?" Vrel had felt something crack in his certainty then. This woman, this fragile-looking creature from the mythical Deathworld, was either completely insane or completely confident. Neither option made him comfortable. Now standing on the observation platform with his hand raised to order her execution, Vrel had to wonder which one it was. "Ready the firing squad," he commanded, his voice carrying across the compound. The soldiers raised their rifles in perfect synchronization, trained weapons pointing at the small figure against the wall. Rita Torres stopped smiling and looked directly at Vrel. "Your call, Commander," she said quietly, "but you are going to regret this." The 6 soldiers of the firing squad were not ordinary troops. Vrel had handpicked them himself from the base's most elite units. Corporal Finn, with her 17 confirmed kills in the border conflicts. Private First Class Jorik, who could hit a target the size of a credit chip from 200 meters. Sergeant Cross, already mentioned, with nerves of reinforced titanium. The others, equally impressive, equally lethal. Vrel had trained with these soldiers personally. He had seen them hold the line against rebel forces 3 times their number. He had watched them maintain perfect discipline under artillery fire that would have broken lesser troops. They were professionals, the best the Corvati military had to offer. So why were their hands shaking? Then checked her plasma rifle for the 3rd time, cycling the charge with unnecessary force. Jorik kept adjusting his stance, shifting his weight from foot to foot like a nervous cadet on his first day. Even Cross, unflappable Cross, had that purple flush creeping up his neck again. They were afraid of her. Of that small, injured, restrained woman who should not have been able to hurt a juvenile grub, let alone 6 armed soldiers in combat armor. Permission to speak, Commander, Rita called out, her voice cutting through the tense silence like a blade through flesh. Valeriel almost denied it. Protocol said the condemned had no rights once sentence was passed, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe that nagging sense that he was missing something critical, made him nod. Granted. Can I get some water? Rita asked, rolling her shoulders against the restraints. And maybe like 30 seconds to stretch, because I have been in these cuffs for 3 days and my back is absolutely killing me. You know how it is, cramped spacecraft, bad sleeping arrangements, the whole captured prisoner of war experience really does a number on your spine. The request was so mundane, so absurdly normal, that Vrel found himself gesturing to one of the guards before he could think better of it. The guard approached Rita with a canteen, holding it at arm's length like he was feeding a predator at the zoo. She drank deeply, water spilling down her chin, and sighed with genuine satisfaction. Thanks, big guy, appreciate it. She looked back at Vrel. So, about that stretch. You have 30 seconds. The restraints disengaged with a magnetic hum, and Rita stepped away from the wall. For a moment, just a moment, every soldier in the compound tensed. Rifles tracked her movement. Vrel's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. Rita simply rolled her neck, producing a series of cracks that made Vrel's skin crawl, then bent forward to touch her toes. She held the position, breathing slowly, like she was at some kind of recreational fitness facility and not 30 seconds away from execution. You know, she said, her voice muffled because her head was between her knees. I have been watching your firing squad, and I have got to say, I am a little concerned about their form. Vrel blinked. Their form? Yeah. Rita straightened up, stretching her arms above her head. The movement should have looked vulnerable. Instead, it looked like a predator limbering up before a hunt. Then, right, the one on the left. She is favoring her right side. Old injury, maybe. Her stance is compensating. Jorik second from the right. He is gripping too tight. That is going to throw his aim high and left. And cross. Big guy in the middle. He is breathing wrong. Too shallow. Adrenaline response. His first shot is going to be fine, but his follow-up, shaky. The silence that followed was deafening. Then's eyes went wide. Jorik actually looked down at his hands. Cross made a sound somewhere between a growl and a whimper. How? Vrel started, then had to clear his throat and start again. How could you possibly know that? Rita smiled that unsettling smile again. Oh, Commander, where I come from, we learn to read body language before we learn to read actual language. Survival skill. You watch people, you learn what they are going to do before they do it. Super useful in freight negotiations, also useful in, situations like this. She walked back to the wall, casual as anything, and positioned herself against it. The restraints clicked back into place. She tested them once, pulling against the magnetic lock, then nodded like she had confirmed something. Just so we are all clear, she continued, and now her voice had lost that playful edge. You are about to order 6 terrified soldiers to shoot at someone who has already calculated 17 different ways this could go wrong for you. Not for me. For you. Vrel felt his primary heart hammering against his ribs. You are restrained. You are unarmed. You are 1 against 6 trained killers. Sure am, Rita agreed cheerfully. And you know what is really funny about that? I am still not scared. But they are. She nodded toward the firing squad. Look at them, Commander. Really look. They have heard the stories too, have they not? The Deathworld stories, the ones about the humans who do not know when to quit, who do not understand the concept of acceptable losses, who treat pain like an inconvenience instead of a stop sign. Stories, Vrel said, but his voice sounded weak even to his own ears.
Yeah, Rita said softly.
Stories. Vrel raised his hand again, trying to ignore how badly it trembled now. Firing squad, he called out, his voice barely steady. Take aim. 6 plasma rifles rose, barrels pointing at the woman against the wall. Rita Torres closed her eyes, took a deep breath and smiled. Whenever you are ready, boys. Vrel's hand dropped. Fire. 6 plasma rifles discharged simultaneously, the sound like thunder compressed into a single crystalline crack. Superheated energy bolts screamed across the execution yard, 6 lines of brilliant blue-white death converging on the point where Rita Torres stood. Except she was not standing there anymore. Vrel's brain stuttered, trying to process what his eyes were seeing. One moment Rita had been against the wall, restrained and motionless. The next, she was 3 meters to the left, the magnetic cuffs hanging open and empty, their locking mechanisms somehow disengaged. The wall behind her original position glowed white-hot where the plasma bolts had struck, metal running like water. She had moved. Between the command and the impact in less than a heartbeat she had moved. No, not moved. Exploded into motion. Huh, Rita said, examining her wrists where the cuffs had been. You know, those locks really are not that complicated once you figure out the magnetic pulse sequence. I had 3 days to work on that. Thanks for the extra time, by the way. The firing squad stood frozen, their rifles still raised, smoke curling from the barrels. Vrella could see the confusion on their faces, the dawning horror as they realized what had just happened. Reload and fire again, Vrel shouted, his voice cracking with panic. The soldiers obeyed, training overriding terror. Rifles hummed as they cycled new charges, then fired first, a snapshot aimed at center mass. Rita leaned back, the bolt passing so close to her face that Vrel could see her hair lift in the superheated air. She did not flinch. Jorik and Cross fired together, trying to bracket her position. Rita dropped into a roll that should not have been possible for someone who had been in restraints for 3 days, coming up in a crouch as both shots scorched the air above her. "Is that your best shot?" she called out, and there was laughter in her voice, actual genuine amusement. "Because I have to tell you, I have dodged worse at a firing range back home. We have this game, right, called paintball, way more challenging than this. Those balls actually curve in flight." The remaining 3 soldiers opened fire in a ragged volley, panic destroying their coordination. Rita moved between the shots like she was dancing, like she could see the bolts coming before they left the barrels. Her movements were economical, precise, never wasting a centimeter of motion. She twisted, ducked, sidestepped, and suddenly she was not at the wall anymore. She was among them. Private Jorik, to his credit, tried to bring his rifle around for a point-blank shot. Rita's hand, small and pale and supposedly fragile, shot out and caught the barrel. Metal screamed as she bent it upward with what looked like casual effort. The rifle discharged into the sky. Then her other hand came up, palm strike to Jorik's chest plate, and the soldier flew backward like he had been hit by a cargo transport. He landed 5 meters away, his armor cracked, gasping for air. "Sorry about that," Rita said, not sounding sorry at all. "But you were aiming at my face, and I am kind of attached to my face." Then dropped her rifle and went for her sidearm. A smart tactical choice. Rita was faster. She closed the distance before the weapon cleared its holster, grabbed Then's wrist and did something with her grip that made the Korvathi soldier scream. The sidearm clattered to the ground. Rita caught it mid-fall, ejected the charge pack and tossed both pieces in opposite directions. "Nice try though," Rita said conversationally. "That was good instinct, switching weapons like that. You have training. Respect." Cross roared, a sound of pure rage and fear combined, and charged. He was massive, easily twice Rita's mass, his 4 arms spread wide to grab her. It should have worked. It would have worked against any reasonable opponent. Rita was not reasonable. She waited until the last possible second, until Cross was committed to his trajectory, then dropped flat to the ground. Cross sailed over her, his momentum carrying him forward into the execution wall with a crash that shook the compound. Before he could recover, Rita was on his back, her arm around his neck in a chokehold that looked almost gentle. "Nap time, big guy," she whispered. Cross struggled for maybe 3 seconds before his eyes rolled back and he went limp. Rita lowered him to the ground carefully, almost tenderly, and patted his armored shoulder.
"You did good. Not your fault you were playing a rigged game."
The 3 remaining soldiers had backed away, their rifles pointed at her but their hands shaking so badly that Vrel doubted they could hit the broadside of a cargo hauler. Rita stood slowly, raising her hands in a gesture that might have been surrender if not for the 5 unconscious Korvathi soldiers scattered around her like discarded toys. "So," she said, looking up at Vrel on his observation platform, "are we done here, or do you want to send more people to the medical bay? Because I can do this all day. Literally, all day. I once stayed awake for 72 hours loading cargo containers in high gravity. This is not even close to my limit." Vrel could not move, could not speak, could not think beyond the single repeating thought that screamed through his mind. The stories were true. The stories were true. The stories were true. This was what a human could do. This small, injured, unarmed human had dismantled his elite firing squad in under a minute without breaking a sweat, while providing commentary like she was narrating a sporting event. She had not even hurt them badly. She could have killed them all. Vrel could see that now. Could see it in the casual way she had controlled every exchange, the pulled punches, the careful applications of force. She had been holding back. Still was holding back. "What are you?" Vrel whispered, and his translator barely caught it. Rita tilted her head, considering the question. "Annoyed, mostly," she said. "I was having a perfectly nice week before your defense grid shot me down. I had a schedule to keep, deliveries to make, and now I am 3 days behind and my ship is probably unsalvageable. So yeah, annoyed." She lowered her hands and started walking toward the platform where Vrel stood. "Now, how about we have a real conversation, Commander? One where you stop trying to kill me and I stop embarrassing your military. Sound good?" Rita stood in the center of the execution yard, surrounded by groaning Korvathi soldiers, and she was not even breathing hard. A light sheen of sweat covered her forehead, nothing more. She might as well have just finished a casual jog. Vrel descended from the observation platform on shaking legs, his sidearm drawn but pointed at the ground. What was the point? If 6 trained soldiers with plasma rifles could not stop her, what would his single pistol accomplish? Target practice for her, probably. "Talk," he said, his voice hoarse. "Explain yourself." Rita sat down on the ground, cross-legged, in a posture that somehow managed to be both relaxed and ready to move at an instant's notice. She gestured at the space across from her, like she was inviting him to a casual chat over stimulants. "I told you the truth at the tribunal," she said. "All of it. I am a freight hauler, independent contractor. I run medical supplies from the core worlds to the outer colonies. Boring work, decent pay, minimal excitement, or at least it was minimal excitement until your defense grid decided my ship looked suspicious. You resisted capture," Vrel said, lowering himself to sit across from her, his legs refusing to hold him any longer. "You fought my recovery teams. I woke up in a crashed ship with armed aliens pointing weapons at my face," Rita countered. "What did you expect? A polite surrender? Where I come from, you do not go quietly when strangers with guns show up. That is how you end up dead. Or worse, on some labor colony mining asteroids for the rest of your short, miserable life." Vrel looked at the soldiers around them. Jorik was sitting up now, clutching his chest, then was flexing her wrist, wincing. Cross was still unconscious but breathing steadily. All alive, all relatively unharmed despite facing a creature that could have torn them apart. "You could have killed them," Vrel said quietly. "You could have killed all of us." "Yeah," Rita agreed, no boasting in her voice, just stating a fact. "I could have. Did not want to, though. They were just following orders. You were just doing your job. Nobody here is actually evil. Just, catastrophically misinformed about who and what I am." She picked up a small rock from the ground, examined it, then squeezed. The rock crumbled to powder in her grip. She let the dust fall through her fingers like sand. "See, here is the thing about humans, Commander. We come from a planet that has spent every single day of our existence trying to kill us. Weather that can flash freeze you or cook you alive. Animals that hunt in packs with strategy and intelligence. Plants that are poisonous. Insects that carry diseases. Bacteria that evolve faster than we can create cures. Gravity that is apparently way higher than what most species consider comfortable. We adapted. We evolved. We got really, really good at not dying." Vrel felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How good?" Rita laughed, but there was no humor in it now. "I am not even special, Commander. Back home, I am average. Maybe slightly above average because I work in freight and that keeps you fit. But that is it. There are humans who run ultramarathons across deserts for fun. Humans who climb mountains where the air is too thin to breathe. Humans who voluntarily jump out of aircraft with nothing but fabric to slow their fall because it gives them a thrill. We have athletes who can run faster than your military vehicles. We have soldiers who train in conditions that would hospitalize your best troops." She leaned forward, and Vrel fought the instinct to lean back. "And you know what the really terrifying part is? We have not even been in the galactic community for long. We are still figuring out what we can do out here, where gravity is lighter, where the threats are different. That little performance I just gave, that was me, injured, dehydrated, sleep-deprived and operating at maybe 60% capacity. 60%. The words hit Vrel like a physical blow. "What do you want?" he asked, and hated how defeated he sounded. "What I have wanted from the start," Rita said simply. "Let me repair my ship. Give me the parts I need, or at least do not stop me from salvaging them. I will leave your little planet, file a complaint with the Terran Diplomatic Corps about your trigger-happy defense grid, and we can all forget this happened. You go back to your base. I go back to my boring freight runs. Everybody wins. And if I refuse? Rita's expression did not change, but something in her eyes went flat and cold. Then, I stop being nice. I take what I need. I leave anyway, and a lot more of your people end up in medical bays. I do not want that, Commander. I genuinely do not, but I will do it if you force my hand. Vrel looked at his soldiers, his compound, his duty. Then he looked at the small human woman who had just dismantled everything he thought he knew about combat, biology, and the natural order of the universe. The choice was not really a choice at all. Take what you need, he said. Repair your ship. Leave. Rita's face broke into a genuine smile, the first real one he had seen. Thank you. Seriously. You are making the smart call here. She stood, offering her hand. Vrel stared at it, then slowly reached out with one of his own. Her grip was firm but not crushing. A handshake between equal. One more thing, Rita said as she turned to leave. That encrypted data your tribunal was so worried about. It really was just personal files. But if it makes you feel better, I will delete it all before I go. No record of your planet, your defenses, anything. Clean slate. Vrel watched her walk away, heading toward the compound exit where a transport would take her to the crash site. His comm unit chirped. He activated it mechanically. Commander Vrel, report, came the voice of Grand Magistrate Kellen. Has the execution been carried out? Vrel looked at the unconscious soldiers, at the scorched execution wall, at the small figure disappearing into the distance. The prisoner has been released, Magistrate, he said flatly. I am filing an emergency protocol update. Earth designation is being upgraded from minimal threat to critical threat level. Recommend all future encounters with human vessels be treated as first contact diplomatic situations, not hostile engagements. What? Vrel, explain yourself. You cannot just... Vrel cut the connection. 2 days later, he stood on the same observation platform and watched Rita's patched-together ship lift off. It was an ugly thing, held together with salvaged parts and what looked like sheer stubbornness. It climbed into the sky trailing sparks, banked once, and then vanished into the upper atmosphere. Vrel activated his personal log, something he rarely did. Note to future commanders, he said quietly. The humans are real. The Deathworld stories are real. They are not myths, not propaganda, not exaggerations. They are warnings. If you encounter a human, do not threaten them. Do not imprison them. Do not imprison them. Do not try to execute them. Talk to them. Listen to them. Treat them with the respect you would show a natural disaster, because that is what they are. Beautiful, terrifying, unstoppable forces of nature wrapped in fragile-looking skin. He paused, watching the contrail from Rita's ship fade into nothing. And if you are very, very lucky, they will be as merciful as she was. Vrel closed the log and walked back to his office, already composing the report that would change Korvathi military doctrine forever. Behind him the execution yard sat empty, the scorch marks on the wall a permanent reminder of the day everything changed. The day they learned that some myths were just history that had not caught up with you yet.